What if the laws of gravity just didn't apply? Imagine a 17th century friar in the middle of prayer, suddenly floating into the air, not once, not as a party trick, but hundreds of times in front of witnesses. And these weren't just campfire stories. The people who saw it included cardinals, dukes, hardened inquisitors, and even Pope Urban VIII himself. This is the truly bizarre and surprisingly well-documented story of St Joseph of Cupertino, better known as the Flying Saint. For nearly 400 years, his case has been a historical head-scratcher, backed by volumes of official church testimony. So, how did a man born in a stable, who was considered slow and clumsy by everyone he knew, become the center of one of history's most baffling miracles? Number 1. Humble beginnings. To get the miracle, you have to get the man, and Joseph's story starts at the absolute bottom. He was born Giuseppe Dessa in 1603 in a tiny village in southern Italy. His life didn't begin in a home but in a shed, because his carpenter father had racked up so many debts that he'd skipped town, leaving his pregnant wife to hide from creditors. From day one, Joseph was different. He was awkward, forgetful, and struggled to learn. His classmates had a cruel nickname for him, Bocca Aperta, or the Gaper, because he'd often just wander around in a daze, staring into space with his mouth hanging open. His own mother, poor and overwhelmed, saw him as a burden and treated him harshly. He later said that life in a strict monastery was a walk in the park compared to his childhood. As a young man, he felt a powerful call to serve God, but the world kept slamming doors in his face. He tried to join the Franciscans, but they rejected him for his lack of education. He got a trial run with the Capuchin friars, but they booted him after 8 months. They decided his frequent, uncontrollable, ecstatic trances made him a poor fit for their community. Clumsy and seemingly hopeless, he was sent packing. With nowhere to go, he begged a Franciscan monastery to at least let him work in their stables. They agreed, and Joseph was put in charge of the monastery's mule. And it was there, in the humblest job imaginable, that his life started to turn around. He became gentler, more focused, and his simple, honest devotion began to impress the very friars who had written him off. Eventually, they took a chance on him and allowed him to study for the priesthood. Against all odds, the Gaper from the stables was ordained in 1628. Number 2, the first miracle. And it was after he became a priest that things got weird. Stationed at the convent of Santa Maria della Gratella, Joseph would fall into such deep states of prayer that he became totally oblivious to the world. His fellow friars said he was like a statue. They'd prick him with needles, even touch him with hot embers, and he wouldn't flinch. Then, one day during a town procession, something happened that no one could explain. As the crowd moved through the streets, Joseph let out a sudden shout and shot into the sky, where he hovered over the stunned onlookers. When he finally came down, he was so mortified that he ran to his mother's house to hide. This was his first major public levitation. And we're not talking about a subtle little float. This was a full-on flight that left people in a state of shock. The story spread like wildfire. The awkward friar from the shed was now being called the Flying Saint, and it kept happening. He'd rise into the air during Mass. He'd float up in the dining hall. These levitations were often triggered by just hearing the names of Jesus or Mary, or seeing a religious painting. And they weren't quiet, peaceful events. They were often dramatic, starting with a loud shriek as he launched off the ground, as if he'd been thrown by an invisible force always aimed toward a crucifix or a statue. Number 3, escalation and corroboration. Now, what separates this story from a simple legend is who saw it happen. Over the next 35 years, his levitations were officially recorded more than 150 times, and the Vatican's case for his sainthood includes volumes of sworn testimony. And we're not talking about a handful of superstitious villagers. The witness list is a who's who of the 17th century. Monks, skeptical doctors, and high-ranking nobles all swore they saw it. For instance, the Spanish ambassador to the Pope met Joseph and was so impressed he brought his wife to meet him. As Joseph entered the church, he looked up at a statue of Mary and instantly flew over the crowd to reach it, said a prayer, and flew back. Then there was John, the Duke of Brunswick, a German noble, and a Lutheran. He was skeptical, so he traveled to Italy and hid in a church to watch Joseph during Mass. He saw the friar levitate twice. The Duke was so shaken by the experience that he converted to Catholicism on the spot. But the most powerful eyewitness was Pope Urban VIII. When Joseph was brought to Rome, he bent to kiss the Pope's feet, was overcome with reverence, and immediately floated into the air right there in the Pope's chambers. He stayed there until his superior ordered him to come down. The Pope was so convinced he declared that if Joseph died during his pontificate, he himself would personally testify to the miracle. If you're finding this story as wild as I do, take a second to subscribe and join us for more of history's most fascinating mysteries. Number 4. The problem for the Church. You'd think the Church would be thrilled with such a clear sign of divine power. But in the 17th century, the supernatural was a double-edged sword. Levitation could be a sign of a saint, but it could also be a sign of witchcraft. Joseph's flights were incredible, but they were also incredibly disruptive. They caused chaos during Mass and turned solemn ceremonies into public spectacles. So, instead of celebrating him, the church authorities started to worry. Joseph had become a problem. In 1638, he was brought before the Inquisition in Naples. They grilled him, searching for any hint of fraud or heresy, but came up with nothing. He was declared innocent. Still, to control the chaos, his superiors decided the best thing to do was to hide him. They forbade him from celebrating public Mass, joining community prayer, or even speaking to anyone outside the monastery. This kicked off a long, lonely chapter in Joseph's life. He was shuffled from one remote monastery to another, his location kept secret to stop the crowds from forming. But the Levitations didn't stop. The few friars living with him kept reporting that he would float in his cell or rise above the garden trees during prayer. Far from a showman seeking fame, Joseph was deeply embarrassed by his gift. He was obedient and saw his inability to control these flights as a personal failure, often calling his own body the jackass for its stubborn refusal to stay on the ground. Number 5. Scrutiny and skepticism. Okay, let's be real. It's the 21st century. We have to ask, was this all just an elaborate hoax? Skeptics, both then and now, have offered a few theories. Modern investigator Joe Nickell has argued that some of the levitations might have been misinterpreted illusions. Maybe, hidden by his robes, Joseph simply shifted his weight from his knees to his heels, making it look like he was floating. What about the more dramatic flights? Nickell suggests these could have been powerful, athletic leaps, with that loud shriek he made being the sound of physical exertion like a martial artist's cry. The argument is that he never just hovered in empty space, but always landed on something solid, like an altar. But these explanations start to fall apart when you look at the details. Many accounts don't describe a quick jump, but sustained hovering, sometimes for minutes at a time, often high above the heads of the crowd. That's a bit more than a good leap. Plus, Joseph was known for being clumsy, not athletic. And while a stage magician can fool an audience from a distance, it's much harder to explain how he could have consistently tricked hundreds of people, including skeptical inquisitors, at close range for over 30 years. So, where does that leave us? Joseph of Cupertino died in 1663. After decades of scrutinizing the mountain of evidence, the Church was convinced. Pope Clement V officially made him a saint in 1767. The case of St Joseph of Cupertino remains one of the most thoroughly documented supernatural events in history. We have the sworn testimony of over 150 credible people, from peasants to a pope, who say they saw a man fly. We have the records of the Inquisition, which investigated him for fraud and gave him a pass. And we have the story of a man who wasn't some charismatic guru, but a humble, simple friar who was ashamed of the very thing that made him famous. Science wants a natural explanation, but the historical record keeps presenting a story that defies an easy answer. Was this divine intervention? A case of mass hysteria? Or was Joseph of Cupertino the greatest illusionist who ever lived? What do you think? Was Joseph a genuine miracle worker? Or is there another explanation for the flying friar? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for sticking with us on this wild one. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay curious.